5 days later, down came the high priest of Ananus with some elders and a barrister called Tertullus. They laid information before the governor against Paul, so Paul was summoned, and then Tertullus proceeded to accuse him. Your Excellency, he said to Felix, as it is owing to you that we enjoy unbroken peace, as it is owing to your wise care that the state of this nation has been improved in every way and everywhere, we acknowledge all this with profound gratitude. I have no wish to weary you, but I beg of you to grant us in your courtesy a brief hearing. The fact is, we have found this man a perfect pest. He stirs up sedition among the Jews all over the world. He is a ringleader of the Nazarene sect. He actually tried to desecrate the temple, but we got a hold of him. Examine him for yourself, and you will be able to find out about all these charges of ours against him. The Jews joined in the attack, declaring that such were the facts of the case. Then, at a nod from the governor, Paul replied, as I know you have administered justice in this nation for a number of years, he said, I feel encouraged to make my defense because it is not more than 12 days, as you can easily ascertain, since I went up to the worship at Jerusalem. They never found me arguing with anyone in the temple or causing a riot, either in the synagogue or in the city. They cannot furnish you with any good proof of their present charge against me. I certainly admit to you that I worship our Father's God according to the methods of what they call a sect. But I believe all that is written in the law and in the prophets, and I cherish the same hope in God as they accept, namely that there is to be a resurrection of the just and the unjust. Hence, I too endeavor to have a clear conscience before God and men all the time. After a lapse of several years, I came up with alms and offerings for my nation, and it was in presenting these that I was found within the temple. I was ceremonially pure. I was not mixed up in any mob or riot. No, the trouble was caused by some Jews from Asia who ought to have been here before you with any charge they may have against me. Failing them, let these men yonder tell what fault they found with my appearance before the Sanhedrin, unless it was with the single sentence I uttered when I stood and said, it is for the resurrection of the dead that I am on my trial today before you. As Felix had a rather accurate knowledge of the way, he remanded Paul, telling the Jews, when Lysias, the commander, comes down, I will decide your case. He gave orders to the officer to have Paul kept in custody, but to allow him some freedom and not to prevent any of his own people from rendering him any service. Some days later, Felix arrived with his wife Drusilla, who was a Jewess. He sent for Paul and heard what he had to say about faith in Christ Jesus, but when he argued about morality, self-mastery, and the future judgment, Felix grew uneasy. You may go for the present, he said. When I can find a moment, I will send for you, though at the same time he hoped Paul would give him a bribe. He did send for him pretty frequently and conversed with him, but when 2 years elapsed, Felix was succeeded by Porcius Festus, and as Felix wanted to ingratiate himself with the Jews, he left Paul still in custody. 25. 3 days after Festus entered his province, he went up from Caesarea to Jerusalem. The high priests and the Jewish leaders laid information before him against Paul and begged him as a special favor to send for him to Jerusalem, meaning to lay an ambush for him and murder him on the road. Festus replied that Paul would be kept in custody at Caesarea, but that he himself meant to leave for Caesarea before long. When, he added, your competent authorities can come along with me and charge the man with whatever crime he has committed. After staying not more than 8 or 10 days with them, he went down to Caesarea. Next day, he took his seat on the tribunal and ordered Paul to be brought before him. When he arrived, the Jews who had come down from Jerusalem surrounded him and brought a number of serious charges against him, none of which they were able to prove. Paul's defense was, I have committed no offense against the law of the Jews, against the temple, or against Caesar. As Festus wanted to ingratiate himself with the Jews, he asked Paul, will you go up to Jerusalem and be tried there by me upon these charges? Paul said, I am standing before Caesar's tribunal. That is where I ought to be tried. I have done no wrong whatever to the Jews. You know that perfectly well. If I am a criminal, if I have done anything that deserveth death, I do not object to die. But if there is nothing in any of their charges against me, then no one can give me up to them. I appeal to Caesar. Then, after conferring with the council, Festus answered, you have appealed to Caesar. Very well, you must go to Caesar. Some days had passed when King Agrippa and Bernice came to Caesarea to pay their respects to Festus. As they were spending several days there, Festus laid Paul's case before the king. There is a man, he said, who was left in prison by Felix. When I was in Jerusalem, the high priests and elders of the Jews informed me about him and demanded his condemnation. I told them that Romans were not in the habit of giving up any man until the accused met the accusers face to face and had a chance of defending himself against the impeachment. Well, the day after they came here along with me, I took my seat on the tribunal without any loss of time. I ordered the man to be brought in, but when his accusers stood up, they did not charge him with any of the crimes that I had expected. The questions at issue referred to their own religion and to a certain Jesus who had died. Paul said he was alive. As I felt at a loss about the method of inquiry into such topics, I asked if he would go to Jerusalem and be tried there on these charges. But Paul entered an appeal for his case to be reserved for the decision of the emperor, so I ordered him to be detained till I could remit him to Caesar. I should like to hear the man myself, said Agrippa of Festus. You shall hear him tomorrow, says Festus. So next day, Agrippa and Bernice proceeded with great pomp to the hall of audience, accompanied by the military commanders and the prominent civilians of the town. Festus then ordered Paul to be brought in. King Agrippa and all here present, said Festus, you see before you a man of whom the entire body of the Jews at Jerusalem and also here have complained to me. They loudly insisted that he ought not to live any longer. I could not find he had done anything that deserved death, so I decided to send him on his own appeal to the emperor. Only I have nothing definite to write to the sovereign about him. So I have now brought him up before you all, and especially before you, O King Agrippa, in order that I may have something to write as the result of your cross-examination. For it seems to me absurd to forward a prisoner without notifying the particulars of his charge. Then Agrippa said to Paul, you have our permission to speak upon your own behalf. At this, Paul stretched out his hand and began his defense. Hold on. I'm going to save that for tomorrow.